This was for anyone looking for their first wholesale deal. Our guest made $96,000 in his very first month of wholesaling, doing 4 separate deals. So a lot of the issues people have when they're first starting out, you're going to be able to avoid by listening to this episode. I'll give you a hint. It starts with doing a big amount of numbers. So for example, our guest today, he started with 1,000 pieces of mail in his first month rather than starting with 10 and seeing what happened. This is the podcast for 10xing your income, replacing your W-2 through wholesaling real estate, which is a business model where you find a distressed property, you get it under contract for a discount, and then you sell it to an investor without using any of your money, and it all happens before the closing. My name's David Lecko. I actually created a process that's helped people close 10,000 of these wholesale deals in all 50 states with the software platform called DealMachine.
And my name is Ryan Haywood. And back in 2019, I started a 30-day wholesaling challenge and got my first deal done in 14 days and have since gone on to do over 400 transactions in wholesale.
All right, so Lance calling to us through his Starlink in his Cybertruck in Dallas, Texas. How you doing, man? And tell us, how did you actually get your very first wholesale deal?
I'm doing great, man. My first wholesale deal, I send out marketers in January 2016. Send out probably 1,000 pieces of direct mail into a smaller, older city in the north east corner of the Dallas Metroplex. I specifically focused on a downtown area that had homes that were as much as 150 years old, up to obviously new homes too. It was just a really big mix of property. So I ended up contracting 4 properties in February, and then I sold those 4 properties and made $98,000 in March. And I was like, wow, this is what I'm going to do. So then I just kind of kept doing that.
So you sent out 1,000 mailers, which is great. I wish everybody getting into this would just start with at least 1,000. Great number there. And so you got a call back, and this seller in particular had 4 properties that they owned?
No, it was 4 separate sellers, 4 individual properties, 4 separate deals. And I was honestly, I had bought a couple flips from wholesalers late the previous year with my parents. And I paid I don't know, I want to say 30 or 40. So it was $90,000 for 2 properties. And I'd paid $30 or $40,000 in assignment fees for those 2 properties. And I was like, stupid.
Why did I just
were previously buying
from wholesalers?
Yeah, I bought from 2 wholesalers. And when I saw the fees they were making, one of them, I think I bought the property for 42, and he made he bought it for 20. So he made 22. The other one bought it for 35, sold to me for 50. And I was like, man, it's $37,000 that these jokers are getting for doing nothing. I can do that. So I sent out some mailers, and I was planning on flipping the properties I got under contract, but I got too many under contract. I didn't have the money or bandwidth or infrastructure to do 4 pretty substantial flips at once. And so from there, I just kind of was like, okay, well, and then I went to some meetups, and people were offering me I need a deal. And I was like, I got some deals. I bought this one for 100. I'll sell it to you for 125 if you want it. Okay. And then I had another one. I was like, oh, I bought this one for, I think 110. I sold it for 140. I bought another one for 15. It was a couple lots, and I sold it to someone for, this was 8 years ago. I don't remember the exact number, but I remember it all added up to $98,500. And I was like, oh, this is super chill. And they all closed in March, and I had no freaking clue what I was doing. All I had done is I'd listened to this. At this time, there's probably 100 and maybe 120, 150 Bigger Pockets podcast episodes. So I just listened to all of them. And I was like, wholesalers suck. They're stupid. And then I got those offers, and I was like, okay, I guess I can get down with this. I guess I get it. So that's kind of how it started. Yeah.
You became the Joker.
I became the Joker.
Well, he's more legit than them, Ryan. He's singing a Cybertruck.
That's true.
Well, like, so what I kind of learned is wholesaling is a really good place to start because it teaches you to source deals. At the same time, in order to source them appropriately, you have to learn how to underwrite them. You have to learn how to underwrite the construction. You have to understand the whole process as well as the rental process. Because we had buyers who were rentals when we were wholesaling. We had buyers who were flippers. And so 2016 and 2017, I didn't buy and hold anything. I just wholesaled like crazy. 2016, I did just under $1 million in assignment fees. And 2017, I did almost $3 million in assignment fees. And so I did a lot of volume and learned how to structure things and how it works. And then 2018, 19, I like started dabbling in buying and holding and flips and other things. And then as time, I ended up selling some of those and like was kind of trying to figure it out. And then in the end, I ended up, 2020, I started selling financing actually, because that made a lot of sense for us. Just with COVID in the market. And then in 2021, I started buying and holding 22, 23, and I still buy and hold. So I wholesale, I novate, we sell our finance, we buy and hold, and we flip. Just depends on the deal and what makes sense.
So back in your first month when you made $96,000, did you have a special contract that you used, or did you use the regular state contract?
I used the TREC. Yeah, I used the TREC at first. I probably wouldn't keep.
What is that? That's like
that's the Texas real estate contract. It's the Texas propagated form that realtors use. So I used that to start, and then I had an attorney write my own contract in 2016. Like by probably month 4 or 5, I got my own contract just so that I could secure the property better, and then also not have like liability in the event I couldn't perform in my so
got it. So those are some of the differences. Is if you could not close, you could back out, and that was easier to do that.
So my contract just reads that the only remedy the seller has in the event we don't perform on the contract is the earnest money, and so that's just protective versus a TREC contract. It doesn't have that quite laid out as clearly, and so you'd have to do an addendum that would lay that out very clearly. But a TREC contract's also, in my opinion, hyper complex. A TREC contract is 13 pages, and it's written in pretty deep, like legal jargon. And then our contract is 3 pages, and it's written in pretty layman's terms. Like if you graduated high school, you should be able to understand everything in the contract.
Yeah. So that's great. If somebody in distress, they're not going to be hesitating to sign a contract that's easier to understand.
Yeah. And then it does offer us a lot of protections too. And a few like little things that have helped us a lot. Like one of the things written in our contract is we have a built-in 15-day extension. And all we have to do is inform the seller that we're exercising that. We don't have to get their consent. And so that can come in really clutch when like you find a buyer and they can't quite close in time if you're wholesaling and you just need a few extra days and the seller doesn't want to comply. Like obviously we always try to get compliance, but sometimes sellers get really, stuck on closing a certain day. So there's a handful of little things like that in our contract that have just protected us over the years.
Okay, got it. Interesting. Did you feel like you were nervous at all that you wouldn't be able to perform with any of these 4 first properties since they were your first 4 and you've never had something before?
I mean, sort of. I was really like looking to banks to help me fund those properties and then looking to do the flips. And so I knew I could perform from that perspective, but I wasn't aware of like the risks I was taking by getting into the contracts with somebody. I didn't understand like how much. I was just naive. I didn't know the risks I was taking, and so that was. It didn't feel like a big risk at the time. Looking back now, I do see that it's a little bit more risky, but that's kind of why you get paid for it. You're taking some risks. And it's pretty rare to get sued for non-performance on a contract. It does happen, but it is definitely rare. I've done well over 1,000 deals now, and I've only been sued once for non-performance. And I've contracted way more than 1,000, probably closer to like 1,300 or 1,400 deals. And so you've dropped out of a lot of contracts, and very rarely does the seller want to litigate.
Yeah. DealMachine listeners, I'm wearing my turtleneck, not because it's Steve Jobs' birthday, not because Apple just announced they're integrating AI into their phones. Nope, none of that. It's because we're coming up on DealMachine Unveiled, which is our special live presentation where we're unveiling the latest innovation in real estate technology. Last November, we had an Unveiled event, and we broke down the house with unlimited skip tracing, which also improved with our private investigator tool the accuracy of your skip tracing results by 50%, meaning if you don't get data, you can actually see every person with that homeowner's name all in one spot, in one place. There's no other place you can get that. So come July 1st, reserve your spot, get notified, be among the first to see what's coming next for the real estate industry. The URL, by the way, is DealMachine.com/unveiled. So tell us, you're breaking up like a little bit. We didn't hear most of that, but I think that it will upload, with full quality. So I think it's still good. But I just was curious, maybe we could switch over to you telling us, like, how has your operation evolved since 2016? Because I know you're doing novations, you're doing some rentals and experimenting, but do you still make $96,000 a month? Like, is that a realistic goal for a wholesaler in today's market?
Yeah, for sure. Most months are at least that, I'd say. But I have overhead now. So back then it was just me. And so there's a lot less overhead. So that felt like a lot more money. Now we'll have months where we'll do several $100,000 of revenue, and there'll be months where we just do like 100. But it just depends on what we're focusing on at the time. Now the operation has evolved into, we own about 200 rental properties, 200 doors. We have about 50 seller finance notes that we've generated and that pay monthly as well. So those are kind of like our long-term, reoccurring payment things that we have. So I like both of them for different reasons. Rentals, you get appreciation. You can use depreciation on your taxes. You don't cash flow very much, in Texas at least. But you get some of those other benefits. For seller financing, you don't get appreciation or depreciation, but you do get phenomenal cash flow, and you do get paid. There's three payment. There's three methods of payment. You get a down payment at first, which is usually pretty equivalent to a wholesale fee. Then you usually get you do monthly payments, which create cash flow. And typically, on a rental, I see $100 a month of cash flow. On a seller finance, I see $500 a month of cash flow. And then the last thing you get is there's an arbitrage at the end where if you've got a note with the bank or a mortgage with the bank, the mortgage that the buyer has with you, the gap between those two numbers grows each month along with the cash flow. So whenever they either sell, default, or refinance, you get a really big payday at that time too. So there's 3 points of payment. So those are kind of I do those two things, and then we wholesale and novate anything that doesn't fit well into those two boxes for us.
Okay, got it. And how do you decide if you should novate it or wholesale it? And what is the difference in layman's terms with the novation?
So a wholesale is where you sign a contract to buy the property and essentially pose to the seller as the buyer, the end buyer. And some wholesalers disclose that they're not buying, some don't. And for us, it just depends on the situation or whether we're disclosing it or not. So we wholesale properties that are really rough when condition is poor to atrocious, anywhere in that realm, we're typically going to wholesale that. When condition is better, so I would say like from fair to like excellent condition, we're typically going to lean towards innovation is the exit we want to take. But then we also have to get the compliance from the seller. So novation works well when the seller wants more money and they have a little bit more time to get that money, where it's not as urgent. Wholesaling works better when the seller needs money fast. And I usually am going to give them they get a lower price when we have to go wholesale versus novation, because we get a lower price with the wholesale market versus the open real estate market.
I mean, use the same contract, whether you're novating it or assigning it?
So short answer is no. But the little bit longer answer is yes. It's completely identical. There's just one paragraph at the bottom of the second page with the novation language that allows us to novate. And then our option period goes from a 15-day to a 55-day option with the novation. So those are the two changes in the contract. Otherwise, it's identical. There is additional paperwork with the novation that we do have to do. But that paperwork none of it gets signed at signing, other than potentially a listing agreement. We might sometimes bring a listing agreement with us to the signing, where the seller will sign a listing agreement that enables us to take the property to MLS at the same time that they sign the contract. Sometimes we do it in two pieces, where get the contract signed first, and in that novation language, it requires them to sign a contract, a listing agreement. And sometimes we just do them both together. Just depends on the situation.
Got it. So what is your overhead now, that you require to operate a wholesaling company that does $100,000 to $200,000 in assignment fees per month?
Right now, our business overhead's about $250,000 total. No, per month.
So you have $250,000 of expenses per month.
We do the assignments, and then we also have the cash flow from the other businesses. And between those two, assignments, novations, flips, between those all those different sources, that's where we reach profitability.
Got it. And is that people who are talking with sellers and are your acquisitions managers, for example, and getting those properties under contract?
That's marketing, that's acquisitions, that's our construction team, that's our accounting team, our property management team. That's everybody.
And what does your job look like day to day at this point?
So it's like I'm looking for bigger opportunities typically. So like I'm looking for we buy a lot of package deals. So actually, the first package deal I ever did was Driving for Dollars, funny enough, back in 2016. But I kind of learned then that, you can go to sellers who own one property and try and buy their home, or you can go to sellers that own 20 properties and try and buy all their homes. And you can just get a much larger fee and have a lot more kind of buried profit in 20 homes than you will typically in one. And so that's kind of where I focus my energy, is there. And then financing, like with banks and stuff, we do a lot of, we have a portfolio of $50 million of property that we own. And so there's times we're refinancing and doing different things. Yeah, like right now I'm buying a package of 17 rentals in Denison, Texas. So I'm working on financing with the bank on that. It really depends. Like, my philosophy is I try and place myself in front of the biggest opportunities that we have.
Right.
So wherever our biggest opportunities lies, that's where I want to focus.
Yeah.
So for us right now, we have a bunch of real estate cash. So we're working to refinance that to recapitalize. And then we're also working to get financing for the new deals that we have coming on.
Oh, I wanted to ask you that is why do you guys choose to do single family homes when there's a lot of big multifamily deals out there that would maybe also fit what you're saying of hey, that's a big opportunity?
Because there's less people targeting packages of single family homes. I do buy multifamily. Like I have a 38 unit apartment complex, a 24 unit apartment complex, a 15 unit apartment complex. Like I do buy multifamily, but I like to target the smaller multifamily. So this isn't like uniform across the whole country, but typically hedge fund buyers, etc. I'd say the bigger boys, the guys with the deeper pockets, all the way up through to like insurance companies and huge REITs and stuff. They just don't look at anything under 70 units. And the more money they have, the higher quality asset they're typically going to lean towards. So the area that I play in is like the 10 unit, probably my preference, 10 unit to 70 unit. That's the area that I would want to buy in just because there's less competition. There's a lot less like mom and pop smaller shops that can go and compete for those assets. And so that's why I like that space. Those sellers have less exits and less opportunity to sell. But I do focus on that in Dallas-Fort Worth because we want to manage them with our management company and rehab them with our rehab crews. We're typically looking for rough apartments, and we're taking them from a D level apartment to like a B minus. And so we improve them, increase rent, and rock and roll. So I do that. I just don't do as much of that. I can typically find better deals by buying groups of single family homes because those sellers don't have a lot of exit opportunity. When you own 25 SFRs and you're like 75 years old and you're like, oh, I just had a health something or it's time to retire or whatever. If you want to sell through 25 SFRs, your timeline to do that is typically going to be like, I would guess at least 18, 24 months. And that's a lot of work, especially for someone who's aged. And then they've also typically owned these properties for quite some time, so they have a tremendous amount of equity. So for them, it's easier to just say, hey, look, I'm going to take a haircut on equity, usually make a couple $1,000,000 and just walk away. And so for them, that works well. And for me, that gives me an opportunity to capture that equity and make money on that equity.
That's awesome insight. Well, where can people find you that are listening? Do you have social media?
Yeah, I do have social media. I'm on like Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. Lance Wakefield. If you search Lance Wakefield, you'll probably find me. I'm on all of those. And then I also mess around with podcasts. I have a podcast called Pursuit of Prosperity Podcast, Lance Wakefield. So I've got like 25 episodes or something on there. And I just interview other real estate investors, mostly realtors, people who are in the space.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.